Some of you may have heard this recently, but for those of you who haven't, have you ever looked at the sheer amount of fur your dog sheds and thought, surely this has to be good for something? Well, it turns out science agrees with you. A recent study explored something a little bit unexpected, and that is whether dog fur could actually be used as part of potting soil. You have to wonder what triggered them to think of this in the first place, but anywho. So the researchers, they mixed dog fur collected from grooming salons into standard potting mix, and then they proceeded to grow basil, lettuce and marigolds, and the results were impressive. So plants grown in soil containing dog fur, they grew bigger, they were greener, they were healthier than those grown in regular potting mix. And in fact, when dog fur made up around 25 to 50% of the mix, plant growth increased dramatically. There were more leaves, they were a darker colour, and in the case of flowers, a lot more blooms. But why would dog fur do this? So hair is rich in a compound called keratin, which contains nitrogen, a key nutrient plants need to grow. As the fur slowly breaks down, it also acts a bit like a slow-release fertiliser, while also improving soil structure and potentially water retention. So the researchers were hoping that it might perform as well as traditional peat-based mixes, but instead it outperformed them. Now, from an environmental perspective, this is pretty exciting because peat moss is a non-renewable resource and dog fur is something we generate in huge amounts every single day, especially if you own a double-coated breed. I absolutely feel your pain. Now, there is an important caveat. The authors do note that hair can be contaminated with certain topical treatments, things like shampoos, or even, topical flea and tick preventatives, which could leave residues on the dog hair. So what that means is that caution is needed if you're going to use fur for edible plants. However, they also point out that dog fur may still be perfectly suitable for ornamental plants, garden beds, or non-edible uses where the risk is far lower. Now, I'm not saying you should start adding fur to your veggie patch tomorrow, but it's a really fascinating example of how something we consider waste could be a valuable biological resource. And honestly, if you live with breeds such as Labradors, German Shepherds, Huskies, etc., you might already have enough fur to start a small gardening side hustle. So I'd love to know, whose dog sheds so much that they could start their own potting mix business? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for another week of Thursday's Thoughts. I'll see you next week.